Hello there, fellow Scouters. This is Matt Petrowski for Scout Tracker Videos. In this video, I'm going to give you a very in-depth look at how you can get your calendar events from a Google Calendar into Scoutbook and do it efficiently, effectively, and show you how cool using Google Calendar is as a planning tool for your annual calendar. Let's take a look at what I've got. All right, now the first thing I'd like to say is you need to settle in. This is going to be a somewhat long video, but there is a big payoff at the end here in terms of being able to use Google Calendar to plan and manage all of your events and then get those into Scoutbook. Of course, Scoutbook is where the Boy Scouts of America is going to be doing all of their tracking with regards to advancement, but tied into advancement are all of the different things that you do as part of your scouting unit, and that is your outdoor adventures, your camping, your hiking, etc. So the notifications are really nice. And over here on this side, we can see that I have the Scoutbook calendar. Now, in my opinion, Scoutbook should stick to what they do best and what they know well. It started as an advancement tracking app, trying to become a full-fledged calendar. They're just not going to be able to put in the time and resources to make this happen. There's no way. And how do I know? Because Google has hundreds of thousands, if not tens of thousands, or yeah, hundreds of thousands, millions of people who are using this on a daily basis. They have a vested interest in making this calendar the best possible they can. Over here, when I select a particular item, such as the district roundtable here, I come up and I get all of my different abilities to modify this. I can edit the event, but it's just really poor in terms of its management and being able to do things here in this particular calendar. So using Google Calendar, let's go through some of the advantages that you get. All right, so the number one advantage that we have with Google Calendar is that you've got drag and drop for all kinds of things and your repeating events. Now, if your troop is like mine or your unit, you do things based on a recurring basis. Now, Scoutbook doesn't support a recurring calendar event. In fact, you have to go in and manually add all of the different items. So, wouldn't it be nice to be able to simply use Google Calendar, add in your repeating events, be able to make modifications to those repeating events, and then be able to just import them into Scoutbook? Well, we can do that. In fact, we're going to do that when we take a look at the extension that will allow us to do that. First off, I'm going to put in a meeting right here. I'm just going to call this troop meeting. And then I'm going to go into more options right here. And our more options are going to allow us to say that this does repeat, and it repeats weekly on a Wednesday. And that's really all that I have to do here in Google for my troop meeting. Of course, it's not an all-day event. Let's make it happen at the actual times. We start at 7 and we go until 8:30 for 1.5 hours. We save that. Now, what's really nice is Google just took care of all of those repeating events for me. In fact, it's going to repeat for each month for eternity until I stop that. Now, the really big advantage comes in when you have a conflict. If I need to move this particular event, I can move this event and it has been moved, but it is still part of the chain of all of the other events. How do I know that? If I go in and modify one of the originals, say, for example, by adding a description, we will be doing something special. And I click save, what's going to happen is Google now prompts me, do I want to apply just to this specific event, to this event and the following events, those coming up in the future, or all events? As soon as I click on all events, Google is going to handle this for me. I really don't see Scoutbook being able to add in these features and functionality with all the other things that they're focusing on. If they do, great. But as a technology developer, the problem's already been solved. It's right here in Google. I would suggest that Scoutbook just adapt the ability to get things out of Google Calendar and into Scoutbook. When I double click on this event right here, or just simply click on it, we can see that the description was added right there. So that's advantage number one. But the biggest advantage that we have is the fact that a Google Calendar can be shared to all other people and it can be accessed mobile. So when I go into this particular calendar, right here, looking at what I can do, I can select on this options for this particular calendar, and I see settings and sharing. Sharing is caring, and it's really cool. What happens is you can now share this particular calendar. If you scroll down, you can see right here, share with specific people. Anybody else who has a Google account now, I can share this calendar to them. In fact, our committee chair, myself as the Scoutmaster, our treasurer, our secretary, everybody can access the calendar. And through Google, you get to control whether people can just view events or whether they can edit events. And it makes the collaboration process much easier. In fact, when we do our annual planning, we're all sitting there in a room. I'm entering the events onto a computer, and everybody else who has that same calendar opened, they see the events as they pop up. If they have edit ability, they can go in, change the description, and it's absolutely wonderful. So that's advantage number 2. Now let's talk about advantage number 3, scheduling and conflicts. It is absolutely wonderful to be able to use Google Calendar to bring in other calendars that show you exactly what's going on with regards to your planning. What I mean by that is if I click a new little tab here, and we happen to be in the area of Murrieta in California, and if I look for Murrieta Unified School District and then just throw on the word calendar, what happens is you can typically find the calendar for your school district in order to find when you have conflicting events. The same thing can be done with your district. If you go to your district website and you basically look to see if they have a calendar link, you're able to add that calendar to your Google Calendar and see exactly what's going on. Now I can see right here that if I select on this one, which is already purple, if I go to this particular page, what you're typically looking for is you're looking for a little link icon or something that will allow you to get this calendar over to your Google Calendar. So there's these iCal feed instructions, there's the subscribe to RSS. It's typically the link that you're looking for. Now, honestly, you're going to have to dig for this, but when I click on this, I can see right here that I get a calendar link right there. Now, I can highlight that link directly itself. And again, it's going to be different for your district in terms of how you deal with this, but with that particular item copied, I go back over to my Google Calendar, and then we see that we have this Add Friends calendar right here. Now, there's a couple of them that you can do. I can click the plus right here, and it will tell me that I can choose to add a calendar from a URL. So I'll just zoom out right now, and I'll paste that in. I do not, in this case, want to make the calendar publicly accessible. I'll just add the calendar. And what's really nice about this is it will get added to my calendar so that I can see all of the other events. Now, this does make my Google Calendar sort of crowded and conflicted in this regard, but here comes advantage number 4. I have the ability to turn all of these off. I can turn off those items if I only want to see my particular calendar. I can put birthday events in, which if I use Google's contacts aspect, all of my scouts, if I happen to put their birthdays in their contact, they would show up in the birthdays. But Scoutbook's going to handle that on its own because they already have the birthdays. So I wouldn't suggest putting the birthdays and your contact information for your scouts into the Google Contacts address book, although it's possible, and that's what is displayed here with regards to the default birthdays calendar. Reminders and tasks, we really don't care about those. It's basically just our primary planning calendar. Another big advantage, we're coming into advantage number 5, that is being able to adjust. Now, once we've got those events on the calendar here, let's actually just work with the holidays right here. Let's say, for example, I had planned an event that was going to span these 3 days, and it was some type of camp out, and I click save, and I can see, well, this conflicts with Veterans Day. Well, in order for me to move this, all I have to do is just drag it. That doesn't work. No, we need it to start on that Saturday. Done deal. So from a planning standpoint, I really don't see Scoutbook being able to have all of this functionality, including the sharing, the drag and drop, the ability to support external calendars of your district and your school district, and being able to see what's going on, and plus the sharing. It is just an absolute joy and advantage in order to plan this out. We can plan our whole annual calendar in 1 2-hour setting and be done with it. Now, That's the advantages of Google Calendar, and you may already know about that, but the real trick is, how do I now get this into Scoutbook? And how do I get all of the wonderful advantages that Scoutbook provides, which are its reminders and who is notified, scouts, parents, leaders, etc. Well, in the rest of this video, that's what we're going to be taking a look at, how we can get all of this information so quickly and easily into Scoutbook. All right, so we've learned how cool Google Calendar is from a planning standpoint and being able to manipulate things really quickly and easily. What we don't know is, how do we get all of that planning for multiple months into Scoutbook, where there's going to be two pieces to the puzzle. I've created one of them for you, and another volunteer, Gary Foots, I believe I'll have to look at it. We'll see the screen coming up here really quick, has created a plugin or an extension that is an add-on to a browser. Now, there's only two browsers that are supported, Mozilla or Chrome. So if you're on a Macintosh and you're using Safari, there is no plugin. But here in my Scoutbook, when I click on events just after logging in, and we scroll past my calendar, all of my events, one of the things that we can see right here, which is not available by default with Scoutbook, is import calendar events from CSV. CSV stands for comma separated values, if you didn't know. This is our magic. This is being able to get Google Calendar into Scoutbook. Now, if we take a look right here on screen, there is this little icon right here, and you can see the tooltip is showing us Feature Assistant for Scoutbook. So we need to take a look at this, because if we don't have this installed in either Mozilla or Google Chrome, we will not be able to import what I'm going to show you we're able to do from our Google Calendar. So let's take a look at how we get Feature Assistant and install that into our Chrome browser. All right, again, I've got to state, you're going to have either Chrome, Google Chrome, and that's Macintosh or Windows, or Mozilla. Now, the page that I have loaded on screen here, as I zoom in, and we can see the URL right there. Fortunately, you don't have to remember this. I'm going to have this down in the link description down below in this video, as well as the link to the spreadsheet that I'm going to be showing you that will create the import file so that you can import your Google Calendar events into Scoutbook. But Scoutbook has all kinds of cool features in terms of what it can do, but they're not exposed. So this isn't an official BSA tool. You need to know that you are using something that was coded by a volunteer. That means by Gary himself, using the Feature Assistant, or the spreadsheet by myself. And you'll see that there are some steps that you have to take in order to actually authorize my extension or the script in order to do what it does when you're going to be able to export your events. But we'll walk through that. So if you go to the Google Chrome store, or if you go to type in that page or click on the link, which is down in the descriptions, you will be able to be taken to where you're able to find the extension. Now, I'm on the Chrome extension store because I'm using Google Chrome. And if I simply go to the search extensions and type in Scoutbook itself, the #1 extension that we're going to come up with is Feature Assistant. And we've got Gary Foyts. I hope I'm saying that right, Gary. All you're going to have to do is click the Add to Chrome. Now, it's going to ask you for permissions. As I add right here, it can read and change your data on all scoutbook.com websites. So as soon as I click Add Extension, what's going to happen is it's going to show up right here as an extension. And if you ever want to have information about this, here's my tip. Once that's closed, you can always right-click on this and choose Feature Extension for Scoutbook. You can choose the options. You can choose to manage your extensions, but simply right-clicking is where you're going to have a lot of additional information. So if we choose this feature extension, that's going to load up the Chrome. Let's choose the options one. I'll choose options. What it's going to do is it's going to load a page that has all of the different things that Feature Assistant will do. Now, there's no way that I can cover all of them in this video. It would end up being a 3-hour video. But you can see that as we scroll here, he supports repeating events, copy events, calendar messaging, update multiple, enhanced calendar view. It really does take Scoutbook above and beyond, at least as of the current release of Scoutbook. And make note of the date of this video. I'm shooting this in November of 2018, and as far as I'm aware, Scoutbook is planning on updating, and I don't know how many of these features they may or may not add in, but of course Scoutbook will grow in terms of what it's capable of. But as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to planning, I am almost always going to be using a Google Calendar because I seriously doubt that Scoutbook is going to be able to come up to snuff with regards to feature comparison with what Google can do in their calendar. Plus, the sharing alone is just worth its weight in gold. So you can go through all of the different advantages of what the feature extension does, but it really enhances Scoutbook, at least as of the current release, in terms of what you can do. So it's that feature that I showed you, the ability to import events as comma-separated values that we need to be able to have. So that's the first piece to the puzzle. The second piece to the puzzle now is how do we get our information into a comma-separated format, knowing that it's all locked in a Google Calendar? Well, that's what we're going to take a look at now, and I will show you the steps that you're going to need to walk through. All right, so now let's take a look at creating the comma-separated value, the export sheet, the thing that we're going to be able to import into Scoutbook using the Feature Assistant extension. Now, this is what I have created that will help you get all of your events out of Google Calendar and into a format so that you can import them directly into Scoutbook. It all happens with this spreadsheet. Now, the link is down in the description of this YouTube video. And when you open this link, what you're going to see is a window that looks like this. And the most important thing that you're going to see is this right here. This current spreadsheet is set as a view only. So basically, you can look at it, but it really won't do you a whole lot of good because you can't edit or change any data. So what this means is that you need a copy of this spreadsheet. And here's the important thing to remember. When you make a copy of this spreadsheet, the spreadsheet will no longer be attached to this current spreadsheet, which is in my Google Drive. And hopefully that makes sense. You're making a copy of it, which means if I add new features and functionality, you won't necessarily have them. You would have to go back to the original sheet and make another copy again. But the key thing is, basically, you're not storing anything permanently in this sheet. Or if you do, you can basically save it out to a separate sheet. So here's how you make a copy. Go to the File menu and then choose the Make a Copy. Once you make a copy, you'll be saving it into your Google account, and you will then have full control to edit the spreadsheet in order for it to automatically extract all of your calendar events and put them into the dedicated sheet so that you'll be able to export that sheet and then import it into Scoutbook. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We'll open up the sheet. I'll talk about and walk through all of the different settings that you need to go through in order to use it. It may look a little bit scary, but it's all pretty normal in terms of what Google asks you for in terms of permissions. So let's take a look at that. All right, so here in my Google Drive, I've made a copy of the spreadsheet, and I'm now going to open this. When I double click this and open, it's going to be like a normal Google sheet. But what we're going to see is a dialog will come up, and then we'll also have the addition of a menu. Here's the dialog right here. It tells us, welcome to Google Calendar to Scoutbook Exporter. Now, all this is going to do is it's a spreadsheet with a script that's been programmed into the spreadsheet that will go to your calendar and extract all of the items and put them into a comma-separated format. But before you get anxious and just want to dive right in, you have to know that there are settings that you have to adjust so that it will import properly into Scoutbook. Scoutbook events have specific settings that you must set in order for them to be valid Scoutbook events. So as the message says, please read the entire message that we have right here. And this isn't going to work unless you have the Feature Assistant extension. So in other words, that extension that we installed for Chrome from Gary Foyt's, you're going to have to install that. So once we say OK, we're going to see, as I scroll this out, let's see if it got added. It did not get added there. Maybe it happened a little bit slowly. Let me double click that again and make sure that it's going to open and show the dialog. I'll dismiss it so that it adds the menu really quickly. And show the dialog for me. Click OK. There we go. You have to click that dialog pretty quickly, otherwise it doesn't happen. What I mean by that is this menu right here, Scoutbook. There's a menu on my Google Sheet now, this Google spreadsheet, that says Scoutbook. And when I select this, we can see that it says Get Calendar Events. Now, right off the bat, this will not work. Reason is Google, and smartly so, always asks for permissions for any of your data with regards to an external script, even if it's an external script from a spreadsheet that you have saved a copy as, which is what you've done as a result of watching this video. So you've taken a spreadsheet that I've created that has coding in it, which is designed to go out, grab your calendar events, and bring them back into the spreadsheet so that you can export the spreadsheet to be imported into Scoutbook. Sounds like a lot, but it's not too difficult, as you'll see when we run this. So we have to be aware of some settings that we're going to see the very first time that we're going to run that particular item of Get Calendar Events, because it's running code that could do anything. But I promise you, I have not done anything malicious. I've not written code that's going to steal anything or go into your contacts and take anything. In fact, you're able to review the code if you want to, and if you're adventurous, you can go to the Tools section, and you can always go to the Script Editor. Now, I'm forewarning you, this will look like code. When I open this and it opens up, this is all going to be gobbledygook JavaScript-looking code. But you'll see right here, created by myself, I have some links to information about Feature Assistant. I make note that you have to install Feature Assistant. But this is all the confusing stuff that I've hidden into that menu so that you really don't have to go in and take a look at the code. But if you're a developer and you're interested, go ahead. By all means, it is open to you to modify as needed. What we are mostly interested in is the settings that we need to make when we're going to run this particular extension. First, let's take a look at the authorization that you will see when you are going to run this for the first time. All right, so here's what you're going to see the first time that you run this event or run this menu. But remember, we're going to have to set the settings first before you run the menu. Don't get anxious and don't jump ahead. Hopefully you're watching the whole video. You will have to authorize the spreadsheet and the code that it's going to run to be able to go and get your calendar events. The first thing that you'll probably see is this right here, authorization required. A script attached to this document in the spreadsheet requires your permission. The next thing that you will see is probably this. Choose the account that you're going to grant permission to. If you have saved the spreadsheet and opened it into the same account that is the Google account where you are managing all of your scouting events on that Google Calendar, then that's where you want to be. Otherwise, you would have to select a different account, the account that has all of the events. Now, here's a tip. My suggestion is if you are a Scoutmaster or a committee chair or whoever's responsible for planning the annual calendar, rather than using your personal Google account, I highly suggest that you create a dedicated account. So for example, in my area, I created a dedicated Google account of troop318.murietta@gmail.com. That is a dedicated Google account that I can hand off to any other future Scoutmaster, committee chair, or whoever is going to take over after I leave. If you use your personal account to manage all of your scouting documents and events, are you going to hand that over to the next person? Of course not. So don't manage your scouting calendar within your personal Google account. Set up a dedicated account. So once you grant access, which I would select on the account, which would be my account, we're going to see this scary dialog. This app isn't verified. And basically what this is saying is that Google has not had anybody at Google as a company take a look at the code that's running from this spreadsheet. And why would they? They're not interested in Scoutbook. You can review the code if you want to. It's all right there. I'm sure Gary, who's created Feature Assistant, and other developers who are knowledgeable can take a look at this and verify that it does what it says it's going to do and what I'm telling you it does in this video. This is the final dialog that you'll probably see. It is the granting of permissions. And we can see right here that it is saying that this script wants to view and manage your spreadsheets in Google Drive. And most importantly, it wants to manage your calendars. Now, basically, it's not going to be managing or doing anything to your calendars. It is simply going to be reading data from your calendar. And again, on the account where your scouting events are being added, hopefully not your personal account. So what we need to do now is we need to set up all of the settings so that we can get all of our events. Now I'm going to switch over to our calendar. I've added our troop meeting. We can see that I took one of them out of the sequence, dragged that right there. I've got our special camp out, which is an all-day event that spans the 3 days here. I've also added a blue training, which needs to be actually blue training. So let me change that from training to training. There we go. Those keywords, I'm actually glad I made that mistake, become very important. And that is because when we take a look at the spreadsheet, and we'll take a look at the bottom down here, make sure I'm not covering this. This is very important. You cannot rename things in this Google Sheet. If you do, then the code will break, but hopefully you have no incentive to do that as it is. We have a settings sheet. This is the all-important settings that we need to set in order for things to successfully be created in this spreadsheet to be imported into Scoutbook. We have the Scoutbook sheet, which the Scoutbook sheet is starting out blank, but it's going to grab all of our calendar events, put them in the format that Scoutbook wants, and then we'll be able to import them using the feature assistant. We have events, which this is an extra bonus that I've given you. My former Scoutmaster loved having an annual calendar that listed all of our events on a month-by-month basis. So I decided to bake that right into the same script, and I will show you what it will generate. It will generate a calendar where you can just copy those events, paste them into this spreadsheet, and you'll have a printable annual calendar. So let's walk through the settings and take a look at what we need to have set specifically. All right, so we're almost done. We're going to generate that export file that we're ready to import into Scoutbook, but we have to be aware that Scoutbook has some pretty specific settings. A Scoutbook calendar event, unlike a Google Calendar event, is very specific to scouting. When we see that we have a calendar that we can choose, that calendar is the name specific to your particular unit. It may say troop, whatever number you are, pack, whatever number you are, squad, team, crew, etc. You're simply going to need to match this to the settings over in the spreadsheet. The event type is also specific to the unit type that you have. So actually, I'll need to select my calendar. Let me select my calendar here and set that. It now knows that it is a troop. It has added some people, which I've blurred out conveniently. We now have troop meeting types. So as we scroll through this, you can see that we have troop meeting, court of honor, patrol leaders, recruiters, committee meeting, camp out. These are all specific event types that Scoutbook is classifying for us. We cannot create our own custom values. The only thing we have is the other option that we can see right there. So we have to classify all of these different types of events. That means that it would be helpful in our Google Calendar if we were able to do that as well. So here's my suggestion. The script that I've written for extracting all of the Google events looks at two different places. It either looks at the very first line of the description, or it looks at the title of the calendar event. If the calendar event is, say, for example, aptly titled committee meeting, then that's what it will be classified when it is pushed or pulled from your Google Calendar and put into the spreadsheet. So we'll see that when I actually run this. But these items are very specific. So where do they match in Scoutbook or in the spreadsheet? Well, let's take a look. As I scroll down this spreadsheet, down into the bottom, you're going to see all of the different unit types. We can see right here that up at the top, we have troop, where we've got the matching events of troop meeting, court of honor, patrol leaders council, recruiting, etc. And it follows on for all of the different unit types that Scoutbook currently supports: patrol events, pack event types, den, crew, team, and squad. Now, you are only going to be picking one of these different setting areas based on your unit type. But when it pulls these calendar items, it doesn't know which one to pick unless we set it up at the top. So let's go through our settings. And we'll zoom in right here. Actually, let me make sure that my head's not covering this so that we can take a look. We'll zoom in. So first off, our most important setting is our Google Calendar name. Now, Google allows us to have multiple calendars. By default, our default calendar is typically accessed through the email address that is our Google account. So for me, once I saved this spreadsheet out of my Scout Tracker account here into my Troop318, this becomes troop318.marietta@gmail or whatever Google account you're using. Again, my tip is don't use a personal account. The next thing is the spreadsheet, or the script, I should say, actually runs some pretty cool logic. You can limit what events you go grab from your Google Calendar. You can limit it based on two different pieces of information. One is the starting date and the ending date, and another is an actual keyword. If, for example, I had a number of events that included the keyword campout, like snow sports campout, big forest campout, as long as I use that keyword campout in the title of the event or in the first line of the description, this will find it. I would be able to simply type in campout, and then when I run the get calendar events from my Scoutbook menu, only campout items with the keyword of campout will be found. By default, we're going to leave that one empty. The unit type is where we specify what is going to be used down at the bottom, down here. If I put troop, then all of this area is going to be used with all of its settings. You can see that I have mine set by default in the copy of the spreadsheet that you got access to because we are a troop. If you are a patrol or if you are a pack, then you're going to want to change that up at the top. And it shows you right here that you need to choose troop, patrol, pack, den, crew, team, or squad. And only these are allowed. If I accidentally put troops, it should go red. If it's red, not good. But if I'm running a pack, then I would, of course, change that to pack. So for this video, let's stick with troop because that's what I'm using. Now, the next thing that we have is the starting date and the ending date. If I want to go from the first of the year, from 1/1/2018 or whatever year, or if I even want to roll over into another year, I can certainly do that. I can go to 6/1/2019. Starting and ending dates, completely up to you in terms of what you want to grab from your calendar so that you can save the spreadsheet and export into Scoutbook. Next is the target Scoutbook calendar. That's the calendar where we want the events to go. Now, just a little while ago in the video, when you saw me making my selection, I could choose from Troop 318 as my overall troop calendar, but I also had patrol calendars. So whatever you put here, I believe it's Troop 318 or troop whatever your troop number is, and then patrol. You basically just need to directly match whatever it shows over in Scoutbook. That's so that when you import, Scoutbook knows where to properly put all of your events. I'll stick with the Troop 000 for right now because I'm not going to be importing this data. Now here we get all of the different event types. Now we saw those when we took a look over in Scoutbook, and we know that they are also listed down here at the bottom. So a default event type means if this script cannot find out of all of your events on your Google Calendar which one it belongs to, whether it's a troop meeting or a court of honor or a committee meeting or a den meeting or a pack meeting, then the default that you want to go to is, I want that event to be an other event. And we would use that right here. Now, all of the rest of these settings you will find are our defaults, but they also, let me zoom in so that I'm not blocking it, they also are replicated as individual overrides for the individual types of events in the area down below. So all of those items will be used first down below if it finds those specific items. Otherwise, on our calendar, if it doesn't find the event that matches, this is what it's going to do. It's going to make the event an other type event, or whatever you specify as the default. It's not going to require that people RSVP, which Scoutbook automatically sends out an RSVP reminder for its events. It's not going to require a permission slip. I don't know why you would ever want to do that for another event, but you do want to do it for your campouts. It will not add all leaders, but it will add all parents, which happens to include all leaders, and all your scouts. And the default reminder is 5 hours. Now, these reminders are really one of the biggest advantages that we have in Scoutbook. Scoutbook will automatically send out pre-timed reminders for all of your different events. And as you'll see when we take a look down below, I have some suggestions, at least when it comes to campouts. You also have this setting where Scoutbook and Google Calendar has this distinction. Scoutbook doesn't really recognize an all-day event. An all-day event are those solid colored items that you see that maybe span multiple days or may just be in one day of your Google Calendar. Well, those happen to start at 12 o'clock at midnight for your start and your end when it comes to as far as Google as the calendar is concerned. So we need to set some defaults. Since ours are typically campout events, my default events start at 7 a.m. and then typically on the following day or 2 days later, the boys are picked up around 3 p.m., 2 or 3 p.m. These are the defaults that will be applied to the default event of other. Otherwise, we can individually set those items. Then here is the setting, determine the event type from the title. I suggest you just leave this checked, and my suggestion is in your calendar, you just include those keywords. In my calendar, you can see that I've included our special campout. If I was to modify this event and take off the word campout, what would happen is when this event is extracted, Google or the script would see this as an event that it can't determine, and it would basically classify this as an other event, my default. But remember, I do have two options. I can include the keyword for the Scoutbook type event either in the title, which is my suggestion, or I can do it on the first line of the description, such as right here, campout. This is our annual campout. And so what happens is the script is going to look at this line right here, see that you're calling this event a campout, even though it's not in the title, and then it will classify that as such. So we will cancel out of this because I'd like to keep it called campout so that we can see what's generated when we generate the spreadsheet. So we'll head back over to our settings and we'll just scroll down. And here are my suggestions. So as you can see on screen, and I'll scroll this out a little bit, we now have individual settings for all of the different types of events, which is absolutely wonderful for getting all of these events into Scoutbook. When we take a look at, say, for example, our campouts do require RSVPs. We do require permission slips. We want to include all leaders in terms of notification and all scouts. And I don't necessarily need to include all parents because parents are notified as a result of scouts being included. But you can see that I have a larger number of notifications. I want to be notified 2 weeks out or 14 days, 7 days, 1 day, and 1 hour before the event happens. And the way that this works, you'll look at the information up in the top part of the sheet right here, where it tells us that we simply just need to have a space-separated list of all of the different notification time spans. And if you have a question about what's supported, go look at a Scoutbook event, and it will show you how far out you can go with a notification. So with all of these settings set to what you want to have them set, we're finally ready to go run the event. I told you to be patient and not be anxious. Of course, if you were anxious and something didn't work out, then you probably rewound the video and you're watching this now. So now let's take a look at generating the events and see what we can do just before we import into Scoutbook. All right. Thank you for watching this video. We are finally at the finish line. We are finally at the point where we are ready to get this data into Scoutbook. Now again, with this script and with the spreadsheet, once you do your annual planning, you've shared your calendar to everybody, you've finalized everything, there's one final step of being able to preview and make sure everything that's going to go into Scoutbook is exactly how you want. And it's why I love this technique, is because it's so easy to edit things within a spreadsheet. Plus, the spreadsheet can be shared. You can share this to all of the rest of the people in your unit and give them access to either make comments, view only, or be able to directly edit events, provided they know what they're going to do. So in my calendar, I've added a number of events. I've shifted things by dragging them around, which I'll do right now. This committee meeting, I'll move over to this Friday, even though it's been set to be repeating on the second Tuesday of every month. My calendar is finally ready to go. What do? I go over to my spreadsheet, I go to the Scoutbook, and I choose Get Calendar Events. Now, this is the magic happening. We're going to see that it's going to prompt us, switching to the Scoutbook sheet. It switches to the Scoutbook sheet, and after a few moments, provided we've gone through and granted access, you can now make custom modifications to this data and then export for import into Scoutbook. Choose File, Download As, Separated Values, or CSV. And that's all we have to do. But here's the cool thing about a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet data is all in the format that we want. We can see that we've got our trainings, we've got our committee meetings, our campouts, our troop meetings. All of this should go into the calendar that matches the calendar in Scoutbook, but we've got our starting times, our ending times, everything that Scoutbook is going to love, plus all of our RSVPs, our permissions, whether our leaders, parents, or scouts are notified, our description, which these can all be custom edited, plus the location. You can put the location, although that doesn't come, but you can put the location in the description of the calendar event. And our reminders, which is they're just all automatically set up for you. And again, you can do this at whatever time interval you want. You want to do the whole year? You've got your annual calendar. Once you have gone through this, you're able to then save this and import into Scoutbook. But here's our biggest advantage. We are able to go to, say, for example, the event type and sort this in order to group things together. So I can see all of my campouts together in one place, all of my committee meetings, all of my trainings, all of my troop meetings. If I want to do it by date, I can sort it by all of the dates. I'll sort it by alphabetical A to Z right there. If I want to see everything that is going to require an RSVP, I can sort that one. That is the beauty of this spreadsheet right here, in that I'm able to see that the only thing that's going to require RSVPs are our campouts right there. Nothing else is set to have RSVPs. I could do the same with permissions, leaders, scouts, and parents who are going to be notified. And again, all I'm going to have to do now is this step. File, Download As, separated values. That right there is going to put a file on my desktop or wherever I choose to save that I can then go over to Scoutbook and simply import that file, and all of my events will be put into Scoutbook. One caveat that I will give you in this process is that once you put repeating events in, there is no longer a connection between your Google Calendar and Scoutbook. So if you make a change in your Google Calendar, then you have to make the same change in Scoutbook. The two are separate once you import all of this into your Scoutbook calendar. And of course, you're going to need to manage your Scoutbook calendar. If there's events you need to remove, or if you made a mistake, you accidentally had something set for your troop meeting was set for 8 o'clock and you imported a year's worth of events, unfortunately, you're going to have to go and delete each one of those individually within Scoutbook. It's one of the hassles where Scoutbook's calendar is just not that mature. So let me show you, if you're willing to stick with me for this last little bit, what do you get as a bonus when you use this sheet? Well, that's going to be the annual calendar, and I'll show you how easy it is to simply populate all of your events that were exported here or grabbed from your calendar and put those into the annual calendar, which you can then print and send out as a message to your unit. All right, so here we go with our final wrap up. Yes, I know it's been a long video, but trust me, it is so nice to be able to plan with Google Calendar and get it right into Scoutbook. Takes me a day. That's it. Well, the day includes the actual annual planning. Then I run the spreadsheet, export all the events, put them into Scoutbook. I'm done. That's it. A whole year. Really advantageous. Then when it comes to your annual calendar, being able to hand that out to prospective recruits or to everybody else at a patrol leaders council meeting or wherever you need to share the information, all of the same event data that was exported to the Scoutbook sheet was exported to this sheet down at the bottom called events. You simply copy items from this events right into the annual calendar. So it's pretty easy and it's simple. You can see right here that the 6th is probably one of the first days of the month, where the 26th is one of the ending days of the month. Actually, the 5th right here, I would go from the 6th to the 28th. That's going to represent 1 month's worth of items. So with that selected, all I have to do is copy this, go over to the annual calendar, and paste. So I'm going to copy it with Command or Control C. I'm going to switch over to my calendar. I'm going to select all of these events, and when I have formatting applied, I'm going to go up to this Edit menu, choose Paste Special, and choose Paste Values Only. And that's because I've got the formatting that's been applied to the cells themselves. If I paste it, it would replace all of my formatting. When I paste those in, I can see that they go right in. Some of them actually don't apply. I can see that these two were left over, so I can get rid of them, but I simply just repeat that process. The whole spreadsheet here is designed to take the value from this one field that is formatted to only show the day name of Tuesday. We can see right there is the full date and time of the event. But we've got our dates, and any date that spans multiple days, such as our camp out right here, 17th through the 20th, we basically just have all of this data be modified right here. So if you need to make a direct modification, if I need to change this from a 7 p.m. event, I am going to have to change this right here. I could change it to 1800. This is using 2400 hour time, but I would also have to change this to 800. If styling doesn't actually make it over, all you have to do is select a row that has all the styling you want, click our little paint tool, and then simply apply it to however many rows, and you can see right there the styling will be fixed for us. And of course, you can set your own font to whatever you want. A few other tips with regards to this sheet. This value is actually pulled from the settings. So if over in my settings I had this set to troop 318, which I'll do really quickly, or your troop number, then once it's set in settings, no problem, it gets adjusted in that sheet for me. Also, if you don't like the sizing of this, here is my tip with regards to using sheets. You can select multiple columns. So for example, I can select all of these rows by first selecting one row, number 5, holding down the Shift key, and then selecting any other row, and then I can resize all of these at one time. You can see that I just made them super tiny so that they're practically invisible now, but we'll undo that. The same thing applies to my columns. If I want A, F, oops, I'm going to select A, and I have to hold down, I'm on the Macintosh here, and we're going to do this. Let's see if I can zoom out and grab that. So get the, won't let me grab that right there. I'll just make it larger so that I can grab it. You can see what I've done is I've messed up my calendar right here. And this is the reason why I'm showing you this. Some people might mess up their calendar, but the trick is you can make indiscriminate selections in a Google Sheet, such as selecting A, then holding down the Command key on Macintosh or the Control key, I believe, on Windows, and I can select just columns A, F, and K. So now if I resize any one of those, it will resize all of them to be the same width. So what I'm showing you is that I can make these wider or thinner based on how I want to print this. And I like to have mine pretty thin there on the side, make it even a little bit thinner right there. You can do that for all of the different columns that are in this sheet. If I don't like the height of these, I can select all of them indiscriminately, no matter how I scroll, and I can make them larger as such. So have fun with this sheet. I guess I apologize for how long this video is, but I wanted to provide you with as much information as possible, all of the details in order to help you avoid pitfalls that you might come across and questions when it comes to using this, because obviously as volunteer work, I have another job and I'm not necessarily able to answer all questions with regards to supporting this, but I have coded this. I am in extreme gratitude to Gary Foyt's, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and the Scoutbook Advisory Council. Hopefully they will get a lot of these different features into Scoutbook, but my guess is they're probably never going to replace the fact that I love using Google Calendar for the fact that everything that I mentioned at the very beginning: sharing, ease of modification, the ability to integrate other calendars. I just really don't see Scoutbook actually getting to that point. And as long as they support an import, we are able to go to our Scoutbook, take all of our events that are generated for us, go up to our Save As CSV, and then import those right into the Scoutbook using the Feature Assistant. So my name is Matt Petrowski, creating these videos for Scout Tracker. I hope you've enjoyed this content despite how long it is. I'd love to wish you much luck with your unit, and until my next video, much luck to you.